A very warm welcome to all of y'all. So this is mainly a session around project meetings. The question really is, are you doing it right? Right? So I think one very important thing, even before we start with this, is to understand the concepts of how you actually do a project meeting. Now, before that, let me introduce myself real quick. My name is Dinesh Acharya, and I come with 20 years of experience. I have worked for big brands like Credit Suisse, JP Morgan Chase, FedEx, and Infosys. Uh, I also have trained over 8,000 students and professionals on soft skills, project management, and a lot of other project-related aspects. I've worked in people management, project management, delivery management, and even with quality assurance in my tenure. I'm a Six Sigma certified. So I hope that this session would be helpful in terms of understanding the basic concepts of how the meetings or the project meetings need to be conducted and what's the effective way of doing it. So I think importantly, conducting a project meeting is not really a big deal. The question is, how can you make it effective? The question is, how can you create an impact in these meetings? So, uh, while something extremely interesting is with concepts that managers follow, right? So, uh, as of today, if I had to ask you all a question, which is like, how many of y'all have been a part of a meeting and have felt that it was not a value add? So, what I mean by that is that because a manager decided to have a meeting, spoke for an hour in the meeting, and when you come out, zero outcome. Now, the question is, how can you ensure that the meetings do have a good outcome, right? So the things that we would cover in today's meeting would mainly be the importance and value of project meetings. Second thing, importantly, would be project meetings. What should not be done? Third thing is adding value to the meetings, and fourth is the conclusion. Now, even if before we go to the importance and value of project meetings, or when we speak about respect, so what I mean by that term is to ensure that so you might be a leader who's conducting a meeting, or you might be a participant in the project meeting, right? Irrespective, you're a leader or a participant in this meeting, the most important aspect is to respect one another. So it's necessary to respect the speaker, and it's necessary for the speaker to value the ideas and respect the audience who are a part of the meeting. So let me start with some very basic importance and value of project meetings, right? So the first one comes from a communication and alignment standpoint. Uh, the most important aspect is how do you even start this project meeting, right? So the first steps, and I'm sure that some of you all might be leaders in your organizations and you might already know how project meetings are conducted. So there might be some things that might be repetitive, but it is more like a refresher at this point in time. So when it comes to conducting the project meeting, the most important part of any meeting is to understand uh, uh, and communicate well in advance of what are the topics to be discussed during this meeting, what are the decisions that need to be taken. And I don't want to really go with the pointers. I can just read out the pointers and then possibly give you brief and details around what I actually mean to say. So it's about helping people make decisions during this meeting. So we have put a pointer on decision making. Then we have accountability, team building and motivation, risk management, feedback and improvement, documentation and record keeping, stakeholder engagement. Now I will come to these pointers in as a whole, right? And I'll give you an example of what I actually mean by this. So there was an instance where one of my team managers was conducting his team meeting, and as soon as he entered the meeting room, the first reaction was, okay, guys, let's come up with some really fantastic ideas. Now, the team came up with some ideas, and then he started pushing back on those ideas. And that was even without any kind of a discussion. So there was this person X who said that we think that there are a couple of steps which are non-value added in the process, the NVA steps. can we work towards eliminating them? And he was like, no, no, it has been going on for many years and we have to continue it. Let's go to the next point. And he didn't even want to take it into a discussion. Now, coincidentally, I was in an adjacent room and I could hear what was going on in this meeting. Now, what really happened, or what really transpired in this entire meeting, was that he shot people down by not allowing them to even put in their thoughts. So I think the most important part of any meeting, irrespective you're a leader or irrespective you're a participant in the meeting, it's very important to respect both sides. So if there is an idea that's coming up, it's important to understand what that idea really is, and to very politely tell the person if the idea does not work out, right? Or if you have a difference of opinion, it can always lead to a discussion and later to an agreement or a disagreement. But at least necessarily it should lead to a discussion. Now, in meetings, many a times it would happen that of your a leader would set up a meeting which is for, say, an hour. You enter the meeting, you are a part of the meeting, and the leader repeats the same thing again and again and again. At the end of an hour, you realize the leader says, okay, fine, now we are on time, so let's wrap up. No outcomes, no decisions, nothing being taken. It's just a communication that has got passed. So a leader comes in, just communicates what he or she wants to communicate, and then it is done and dusted. So I think those are meetings which would not really be very effective. So it's necessary that when you have decision making in project meetings, those things would lead to some kind of an outcome if people are aligned to it. So if there is a team of, say, 10 people who you are leading at some point in time, and if you have to conduct this team meeting, it's necessary that these people also understand the value of the meeting, and a decision comes in consensus. Now, you always will have maybe one or two people who are not completely in agreement to a thought or an idea that you recommend or someone else recommends. Instead of shooting that idea down, it's necessary that you look at it more like a you know an area where you can work towards developing and creating a discussion, or creating a scenario where it could lead to a wider discussion, and then finally leading to a better outcome, as compared to just shooting the idea down in the first go. The next important thing is accountability. Now, when I say accountability, in both angles, right, in both tangents. So a leader might want to pass out some decisions, might want to go ahead and pass on some decisions, might want to pass on some projects to some of the team members who have to work on those particular projects. uh, but the question is very simple. uh, so many a times what happens is you get your team along, and you say that, okay, you would manage this, person X would manage this, person Y would manage this, person Z would manage this particular thing, right? But the real question you have to ask yourself as a leader, if you're a leader, is does it really make sense for you to give a lawyer a doctor's job, or vice versa, right? So it's important to understand the capability of each of your team members. I mean, not everyone is going to be exactly the same. Somebody who's good at IT, somebody who's might be really good with IT, somebody might be good with client management, a third person might be good with something else. So it's necessary to understand as a leader as to what is the task that you would want to assign to each of the individual who are a part of the meeting. On the contrary, if you're a member in a meeting, right, and if your leader is assigning you a task, there are two options that you have. One is choose to say that, I think I can do this better, so can I get something else, and possibly see if you can get something else on your plate. The second option, if as I gave you an example, right, so if you give a doctor a lawyer's job and vice versa, they are going to mess it up, and then you would end up saying that the team is not doing a great job. So the second way of doing it is, in case if you're open to learn, and again, if I had to be one of the team members, and if I was open to learn something, and that is the reason I want to take up the project, It's the leader's decision whether the leader really wants to take the risk at that point in time or not, depending upon the criticality of the deliverables, right? So I think team members and leaders need to be open enough in taking up more responsibilities or additional responsibilities from a learning standpoint, and that is where the accountability aspect of it comes in. This would also lead to good amount of motivation in the team, because believe me, if you have to do the same thing every single day, it you would actually become like a robot, right? You would come in the morning, do the same things, get back home. You come the next day morning, do the same things, get back home. On Friday evening, you're happy about the fact that it's a weekend, and on Monday you're really disappointed because you have to do the same thing time and again. Now it's a matter of time that you would really feel that this is not the place I should be working at. If you really want to enjoy that instance, or if you really want to enjoy working at a particular place, I think it's very important both for the leader and for the team to take up things that they really enjoy doing. So as I said, when it comes to a leader, the right people need to be assigned the right tasks. A lot of projects actually fail because the wrong people are assigned tasks. My apologies. So the wrong tasks are assigned to possibly the right people. So I would put it that way. So I think as I gave you examples, right? So I have had team members, and I'll quote this with an example. And this was a mistake that I made, which I will share with you all. So I was working with this organization, and I was managing a team of almost close to about 150 odd people, and there was this team meeting that I was conducting for a small group of people, and there was one guy in the team who was extremely good with automation. And he was never able to use his skills on automation before we could even before the meeting. So we went into the meeting. I was assigning this automation to someone else, and that person was not very great with it. We had to automate a particular project, tried working on it, not working out, led to escalations. And this guy walked up to me and he said that, you know what, I've done a course on automation. Can I try working on this project? So at that point in time, what really happened was there were two people who were parallelly working on the same project. And this guy was able to complete the project in a really fast way and in an efficient way. Now, that is where I realized that he is my go-to guy for project meetings. Now, what happens to the other guy? Uh, the other guy, though he was not able to complete the tasks on time, he was constantly in touch with the client, and he was working towards developing a relationship with the client time and again. So that only made me realize that he is good with communicating with the client or speaking to the client. So it's not about finding the faults or finding the areas of improvement for your team members. It's more about finding their strengths. If you have to create a scenario where your meetings are ideally successful, your meetings really have an outcome, your project really has an outcome, the only way of doing it is to get the right people do the right jobs. So I think that is one aspect. The other thing also is from a risk management standpoint. Now there have been scenarios in my career where I had to take some risks to ensure that we are able to deliver a good outcome. And I'll give you a classic example of this. One of the organizations again that I was working with, there was this team that wanted a staggered shift. So we used to work India night shifts, and there was this team that reached out to me and said that doing night shifts is really difficult. So I reached out to the client and I told the client that can we have the same team doing staggered shifts, so one team coming from India afternoon time to night and the second one working for the complete US time zone. My client was in agreement because this was not a voice based process, and it had a service level agreement where we had time to go ahead and close out on our deliverables. So the client agreed, and we got half of the team into a day shift and half of the team into a night shift. So when I say a day shift, I mean to say afternoon to night India time. Now, when we got these teams rolling, everything was working fine, everything was good, and the client one day reached out to me, and this was during a critical deliverable. The client reached out to me and said, "I need all these guys to come into the night shift for like about a month." Now, I reached out to the team and I spoke to the team. I said, I need you guys to come into a night shift. But the team was really hesitant in moving from a day shift to a night shift. And this is a very common scenario I'm sure a lot of us would face in case if you're working in the Asian part of the globe. So when this happened, I had multiple rounds of discussions with the team, and they were not ready to budge. Now, the risk I took out there was to be blunt and straight with them and tell them that if you do not move into this kind of a shift, and I was speaking just about a month. So I told them that if you do not move into these kind of shifts for a month, we will have to take some strong decisions. Now, when I said that, I was taking a risk of losing or maybe having attritions in my team. But I had to take the risk. I didn't really have a choice. But the team, I think it's more important of how well you gel around with your team, how well you bond with your team, how do you create that relationship with your team to, to have that appetite to take a risk at the right time. So that is important. Feedback and improvement is extremely critical. The one ground rule which we all need to understand as if you're a leader or even if you're a participant, uh, there's one thing which I always used to tell my team that if you have an ego, keep it at home. We don't need an ego out here. So many a times it would happen that if you pass on a feedback to your leader or your manager, they would take it in a very wrong way. The only reason being I am more experienced, so I know better. And I think that is something which is extremely wrong. We need to ensure that we are open to feedback, we are open to discussions. Uh, the only ground rule that when you're working with a team and with project meetings, the only important factor is we all need to understand that our outcome is the same. We are on the same boat with difference of opinions, but targeting the same outcome. So it's absolutely okay to be on the same boat, having difference of opinions, and then working towards targeting a common goal or a common outcome. So I think that is something which is very important. We need to be open to taking feedback, and we need to work towards, creating an environment where we only work towards improving our skills and improving the way the project can actually work. Uh, when we speak about documentation and record keeping, one very important thing which also comes out from meetings, and there is a very famous saying by an entrepreneur in India, and he says that in God we trust, for everything else we have data. So that is something which I have been following for a good amount of time. It's almost been like 15 years, and that is actually my mantra while I do any kind of a meeting. So it's necessary to document every single meeting, and it's necessary to understand what are the pointers that you need to work towards in any of these meetings, right? So uh, it would also be important to keep a track. It would also help in terms of keeping a track of what were the pointers discussed. In the later slides, I will share with you a very, very, very rough draft of how I would track those meetings. And believe me, you can improvise it and you can make it better. But I would go ahead and show you all as to how I would work towards keeping a kind of a tracker to to see as to what were the closed items and what were the items that would be open and would be open for discussion during the next meeting. Another important aspect also is stakeholder engagement. So if you want your meetings to be successful, if you want your project meetings to have a value, uh, and this is, again, there is nothing right or wrong in this. This is something which I have practiced all through my career and it has been successful, is to give an update to the stakeholders if we are working on any specific project. So I think it's very important to, while I have seen the other side of it as well, I have had instances where my leaders have directly worked on projects. They have come to an outcome, come to me, and they have said, we have worked on this project. This is the outcome of it, and haven't taken any approvals. So I think it's important to understand that when you have a client you're working with, it's necessary to reach out to the client to understand multiple aspects, right? It can have triggers from an IT standpoint, it can have triggers from a compliance standpoint, and multiple such things, right? So I think stakeholder engagement is extremely important for your projects to be successful. So I think these are the basic thoughts in which project meetings ideally should run. So in summary, project meetings are essential for effective project management. They enhance communication, facilitate decision making, ensure accountability, and contribute to overall project success. So this was a tagline that I just thought I would go ahead and put across. Uh, I will now move on to the next page, and that is mainly of what should not be done. Now, I'm sure that some of you all will enjoy this particular page because there are some topics which is a pain point for a lot of us. And unfortunately or fortunately, at times we have to live with it. So, something that should not be done in project meetings is entering the meeting without a preparation. So, what I mean by that is that the format that I used to follow in all of my meetings in my career has been that even before I enter a conference or even before a time for a meeting would be blocked, I would make the 5 pointers that I have to speak to my team on. Once I'm done with the 5 pointers, I would set up the meeting, and in the meeting invite itself, these 5 pointers would be put across. Now, the reason I would do that is because the team needs to be prepared as well of what are the things that I am going to be discussing with them on, and they can come with pointers as well on what they want to discuss around those 5 topics. Now, that does not mean that we will not discuss anything other than these 5 topics. If there are any additional topics, there would be a time slot that would be kept to discuss any additional topic. Now, when we speak about off-topic discussions, now this is another interesting part where you will have uh, managers who would be speaking to you on, say for example, they're talking to you on your productivity. They say that you need to work towards getting more productive because you look at this particular cricket star, or you look at this particular soccer player who plays this way, and then the discussion goes into a different tangent altogether. The discussion goes more on soccer, or maybe a particular player, or maybe something else altogether. And then because courtesy that there is a lot of time, that maybe say 10-15 minutes gone in that, and after which it leads to the meeting getting extended, which is the next point on poor time management. Now, I'll tell you something interesting, which has been a pain point many a times, and I have witnessed it as well in my career, is when you set up a meeting with your team, or when the team has to attend a particular meeting. It's necessary to understand that we are dealing with a set of very matured individuals. So there is no point in terms of, because I have set a 1 hour meeting, I just keep saying the same thing again and again and again. So I say this, I speak to you about your productivity. I look at the time, I say, oh, okay, fine. It's only 15 minutes and I've set the meeting up for 45 minutes. The next thing I do is again go ahead and rotate the same thing around. I speak again on the same thing, and I go ahead and speak around on the same thing till I don't complete 45 minutes. And after 45 minutes, I get a self relief or a self happiness about the fact that fantastic, I have used my 45 minutes and I have adhered to the timeline. But the outcome, none. The outcome is ideally zero in such cases. So I think when we are dealing with a set of matured individuals, we just need to go ahead and pass on the message, take feedback, and close the meeting and work towards outcomes. So I have had meetings in my life where I would set a 30-minute meeting and the meeting would get over in 7 minutes. So I would enter the room. I would say that these are the things we need to be working upon. Anybody has a difference of opinion, let's talk it out. There would be a couple of pointers that would come in from people. We would work towards making a quick plan, 7 to 8 minutes at the tops, and I would close the meeting and I would say, okay, fine, let's get back to work. I think that is something which we lack in today's era. And unfortunately, what happens is that we think that because we have set up a 1 hour meeting or a 45 minutes meeting, we need to ensure that we are adhering to the time completely, right from the beginning to the end. Second important thing is, from a time management standpoint, is entering the meeting room late. So if there is a meeting scheduled at 8 o'clock, the expectation is that you join maybe a couple of minutes prior, or maybe by 8 o'clock. If you join at 8:02, 8:05, 8:10, there is no point in that. That's because when you join, you have lost out on some of the important pointers possibly. So I think it's necessary for uh, for us to ensure that, and especially the leader or the driver, to ensure that they are adhering to those timelines of starting the meeting on time. And if you want to end it fast, most welcome. Don't just pull it on because you have to ensure that you're completing a specific time frame. Uh, Ignoring participation, another very important thing. It has happened to me in my life when there have been instances where I've so to be very honest, there was this LinkedIn post that I was reading the other day, which said that just because someone is introvert does not mean he or she does not have an idea. So the important aspect to this is that many organizations push you to talk during meetings. So the way they would say is that, so if there is a meeting that's going on and they would say that we need you to at least acknowledge that you are okay with it or not okay with it, and they will start pushing you to speak during a meeting. uh, at times, if you have a thought, you should not be quiet. You should go ahead and put your thought across. May that be a difference of opinion, may that be something that you want to acknowledge or accept, that's absolutely fine. But if you do not, and if you're in agreement to whatever has been shared in the meeting or with the leader, it's absolutely fine to be quiet at that point in time and say that I'm in agreement. So we are good with it, right? Now, many a times that is considered to be not getting very involved in the meeting or during the meeting. Now, that's an unfortunate part. I think the problem would not be with you in that case. The problem would be with the manager who's organizing the meeting. So it's important for the leader and for the team to be aligned during the meeting to come to a positive outcome, or to come to an outcome that could lead to a positivity for the organization, or lead to a positive outcome for the organization. Uh, the other thing is from a standpoint of failure to addressing issues, right? So there have been many instances, or there would be many instances where someone speaks off guard, and someone would say that this is something that I am concerned about, or this is something I need to talk to you about, and the manager would be like, later, we will speak about it later, and that later never comes. I have had, or I have seen instances of some of my colleagues who would ensure that they would not speak to the team member for months, even before showing an outcome or giving an outcome, right? So the team member reaches out, says, I have an idea. The team leader says, okay, I will get back to you. I'm in a meeting. Okay, never gets back. The team member goes back the second time, third time, fourth time, and it's just not happening. That leads to frustration, or that leads to disappointment for any team member. And the team member is now, even if he has 10 good ideas, he or she doesn't really want to share it. Now, that is something that needs to be taken care of. We need to ensure that uh, we are we are addressing every single issue and concern that that has to get sorted out during a project meeting, or even off the meeting, right? uh, as I spoke before, also important is ineffective communication. So, as I told before, the same thing, if you keep repeating time and again, just because you want to ensure that you've kept a meeting for a specific time frame and you want to adhere to that time frame, even though if everybody has been in agreement the third minute or the fifth minute of the meeting, you still want to continue with the meeting. It really doesn't really add any value to a particular aspect. Now, lack of follow up. uh, okay, so the important aspect to understand out here is micromanagement, I strongly believe, is a bad thing. We should not micromanage our people. May that be your boss micromanaging you, or may that be you micromanaging your team. Irrespective of either of the scenarios, I think micromanagement is something that I would not be very much in favor of. Uh, but that does not mean that we should not follow up on a particular target. So what I mean by that is that during a meeting, if there is a specific thing that has to be worked upon, what I would do is I would put a timeline to that particular thing. And that timeline would be something which would be jointly agreed between me and the person who's working on that particular task, right? So, say for example, I had to set up a timeline of 2nd of October for a particular task to be closed. Uh, if I reach out to that person from today till the 2nd of October, and if I follow up on every single day, what's the status, what's happening, it's a matter of time the guy is going to just lose his cool. But yes, I me, I would still reach out to him maybe once or twice before the deadline to ask him or her if he or she needs any help. More than following up on ensuring that the task gets closed, it's, I think, important to understand if a particular individual needs help to close things. And you should also make it very clear that the help cannot be asked on the last day. So the faster you ask for help, the better it is, and it would become easier for us to have a good outcome, right? So that is something which is important. I think neglecting attendee engagement is something which I've already covered. And uh, another important thing that happens during the project meetings is where we assume that everyone is okay with it. So you speak about a particular point, you you want to take a consensus, and you start assuming that everybody has agreed to a particular point. So I think it's, instead of assuming that everyone is in agreement, I think the discussion should be open. I think we need to have a poll or something of that nature to ensure that that consensus is not forced. So it should be something wherein everybody agrees to a particular point in the right in the right spirit. So let's not assume that everyone is okay with whatever we are sharing. It's important that we discuss it and come to a common conclusion. If someone has a difference of opinion, you can always speak to them separately, asking them what their opinion is, and later you can always check with them whether they still agree or disagree. And as I said before, right, it's not about having difference of opinions. You need to understand we are all on the same boat, working towards leading to the same outcome. We can have difference of opinions, and that's okay. So by steering clear of these pitfalls, you can help ensure that your project meetings are effective, productive, and contribute positively to the project success. So this is something I would recommend. I mean, these are my recommendations of something that you should not be doing during project meetings. So please be careful on these aspects. That would be my humble request. I'll now move on to the next page, which is mainly in terms of adding value to the meetings, right? So as I said before, and maybe some of the pointers I would be tapping again. Uh, so any meeting that I have had in my career, the one very important thing that I have followed is something called as an action item tracker. Now, what that action item tracker means is where anything that we speak through the meeting, I would go ahead and track it, or one of my team members would track it. We would track the pointers, and we would say whether it's an open point, it's a closed point, it's just an FYI, just for the FYI, for the team to understand, team to know. Now what I have been doing is these trackers, I would always send it across to my boss. Now the reason I would say, and that actually helped in my boss being a macro manager as compared to be a micro manager. The reason is that he would get all the updates without even talking to me, so he would be updated on everything that's happening in the process, while I would drive the process and I would take care of the complete process. But my boss would always get an update on what's happening. So every meeting that we would have, and again, the point is not about having a daily meeting and keep updating the tracker. I think it's important that it depends from, I think, business to business, but a meeting once in a week with your team, uh, when I say a meeting once in a week with your team, I would say a closed door meeting in a conference room is something which is important. But other than that, you need to ensure that you're connecting with your team possibly on a daily basis. So that does not mean getting the team together and having a meeting with them, but it's just about understanding if your team needs any support, if your people need any support. That is something which is very, very imperative, right? Uh, so adding value to the meetings, prepare thoroughly, set clear objectives, confirm the understanding of the objectives, practice active listening, manage time wisely, promote decision making, follow up effectively, seek feedback, build a positive environment. So I have had instances in the past where we used to have meetings which were meetings mainly on think IT initiatives, right? So it was more about thinking on projects, thinking on what different can we do, thinking on what new can we have in the in the project teams. What are the improvements we can do in the project, and how we can ensure that these projects are leading to a positive outcome. So when we used to have these meetings, it used to become more like a fire room. And the reason it used to become a fire room is because we would work on a particular idea. It would have disagreements, it would have agreements, it would have difference of opinions. We would think on what could be the outcomes. We could think on how do we go ahead and solve it, and every single voice was heard. So if there was someone who said that I find this project to be an absolutely uh, I find this project to have a lot of roadblocks, and I don't think this project will actually work out, we would respect it and we would ask him for, then it becomes more like a 5 eye, right? It was like, why do you think this project will not really work out? Then the person says because of XYZ reason. So we would ask, okay, why this XYZ reason? And we would see as to how we can come up with more and more of ideas. So those meetings actually led to a lot of ideas, and those ideas would go into the project meetings and we would work towards discussing them. uh, Now this is also because of the fact that we would promote a lot of decision making in these IT initiative ideas, right? In these IT initiative meetings. So these meetings would be like maybe once a month, and for a solid 1 hour. So in 1 hour, we go ahead and discuss on all the open pointers, in all the pointers of on innovations and how we can work towards improving things across, right? So we would work on those particular aspects. I think also important is during these meetings not having personal grudges. So many a times, because every one of us will have different choice of words, different ways of communicating, and and that happens, right? So you will have a different way of communicating things. You'll have a your choice of words might sound a little rough at times, or maybe you might sound rude, but your intent is not really to sound rude, but the receiver has taken it to be rude. So it would happen at times wherein it would lead to a little bit of a conflict within the meeting. But more important was to create a positive environment in the team, to make the team understand that even though there is a difference of opinion, even if it sounds rude, the objective is to go ahead and get a good outcome on the project. So many of these project meetings that I have been conducting in the past as well have had difference of opinions. Conclusion still is the same. We are all on the same boat, and we need to go ahead and ensure we are following the same outcome. We are coming towards the common goal. So I think it's important to promote this decision making and also seek feedback. So I think that is something which is important. Another important aspect also is practicing active listening, because many a times what happens is that we listen to half the statement and we assume the other half. So I think it's necessary or important for us to ensure that we are listening to the complete pointer, or we are listening to the complete thought that is being shared by any of the team member or the leader, and then deciding on what should be our response to it. Right? There is a very famous saying again that don't react to a situation, act to a situation, right? So that is more important. And most of us usually tend to react to a situation. So a classic example being that if you meet if you meet with an accident, or if you end up crashing someone, which is a very common thing in India. If you end up crashing someone on a bike, the first reaction is where you start shouting at the person and you start going on an attack mode, and you start abusing and so on and so forth. But I think it's important in that situation to act on the situation. You have an insurance, the other person has an insurance. Does it really make sense for you to go into a conflict at that point in time? Yes, you can tell the other person who's so 99% of the times you always think that the other person is wrong. And that happens in both the scenarios, right? So at that point in time, it's always best to have peace, think peacefully, and decide whether you really want whether that conflict is really required. So, that is something which I would say that you need to ensure that you're having the right. Uh, so you need to ensure that you're acting on a situation and not reacting to a particular situation. Uh, So by implementing these practices, you can enhance the value of your meetings, making them more productive and contributing positively to project outcomes and team dynamics, right? So I think these are majorly the important. Now, there was a tracker that I was speaking to you all about. This is the tracker, and please don't go with the way this tracker is. I know that it's really shabby. I just made it for the sake of making it, just to show you what were the contents that I would actually capture in an action item tracker, in while having my project related meetings. So I would first put a serial number, a category, which category it falls under. It's an operations, business, finance, admin, HR. You can choose to add multiple categories out here, and if you wish to, you can make all the modifications in this in terms of creating drop downs and so on and so forth. Then I would put what would be the description as to what are we speaking about, what is the pointer that we are speaking about. We would put comments as to how this particular thing is moving. Now, say for example, I've just put it as project has hit a roadblock, and that's just a hypothetical example, right? So on 24th of September 24, XYZ to speak to the client to get the required approvals. Now, assuming project has hit a roadblock because of the required approvals. So on 24th, this person has spoken to the client to get the approvals. On 25th, XYZ spoke to whatever YZX and has got a commitment that the approval will be received. Now, every time this task has been assigned to XYZ. So XYZ has to ensure that he's giving an update. He's putting an update on every single uh, I mean, as and when he speaks to YXZ to get an update on this particular task and keeps updating it, right? Then we would have a target date. Now, target date can move on. There is a possibility that you would keep a target date, and many a times you will end up missing it. So I would also put an actual target date or actual closure date. So 31st of September 24 was the was the target date, and the actual closure date can be and the actual closure date might be a date which is a day later, or maybe a little later than the target date. So I think those are very important aspects that we need to ensure that we are following. The other thing is from a status standpoint, right? So in status, it is opened, closed, the pointer is open, or it's closed, or those are things that also need to be followed. So you can keep it as open, you can keep it as closed, you can keep it ongoing, FYI. So again, this can be a drop down, as in how you want to go ahead and work it across. And then you can have the additional comments. So if you have any comments that you want to add additionally, you can feel free to add here. So this, when it becomes a very big tracker, when it becomes a tracker which has, like say 50 points, all that you'll have to do is click on the status and see what are the open points, because there are many that you would end up closing. There are many which will go as FYI. There are some which will be open or ongoing. So, um, so this is just a basic action item tracker which I worked on creating. uh, I think those are mainly the important pointers that I wanted to cover in today's meeting. Conclusion mainly is encourage ideas and recommendations during meetings. Now, this would be a recommendation that I would have, that you need to encourage more people to share their ideas or thoughts during meetings. Inclusion of every team member, let everyone own the meeting. Outcomes are more important than the time blocked for the meeting. So this is another suggestion that I will have for everyone, that is more important to target on the outcome versus targeting on how much time you have blocked for a particular meeting. And create trackers that would assign accountability to every member of the team, AIT, MOM, etc. Always conclude the meeting on a positive note. So I think that's also very important. Don't like when you end any particular meeting, there is no point you have a lot of fights, difference of opinions, and so on and so forth. uh, at the end of the meeting, it's always okay to in fact, I would say it's okay to have difference of opinions, but the meeting should not be where the meeting should not end on a bitter note. So I think that is also an important aspect. uh, so I will stop here. If you all have any questions, clarifications, or anything of that kind, and your PTO code actually will be updated on the chat. So if you all have any questions, clarifications, I'll be more than happy trying to answer them. So I'm not, yeah. So anything that you all might want to ask or anything that you all might want to clarify, feel free to ask, and I'll 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 try my best to answer most of them. You can put it on the chat if you have any questions. Feel free to share your feedback on the poll that has come in. It's okay to share whatever comes to your mind as a feedback. That's absolutely fine.
We have a question in the Q&A for you.
Okay, just a quick second. Okay, Sasikala has asked a very interesting question. How can we handle the rude member who's provoking the conversation? So I think it's a very valid question, Sasikala, and believe me, every team member, every team will have someone who deliberately wants to. Okay, there are multiple reasons for this person to do this, right? One is he or she is not comfortable about the leader's growth. The second thing can be he or she just doesn't like the leader as a person. The third thing is that this person just doesn't want this meeting to go into a good conclusion. Now, there are multiple scenarios or times where so there are two options to go ahead and handle this. One is take this person off the post the meeting, take this person separately, speak to this person, try to understand what exactly is the challenge that he or she is facing, and what is it that is leading to him provoking everybody in the meeting. The one ground rule that we always need to understand and follow is that the team cannot have a herd mentality. If the entire team is going against, following the negative path, you need to go ahead and draw the line somewhere, and you need to tell this person that it's not helping, don't try to cross the line, because I will not be okay with it. So in case if you're a leader, Sasikala, the way I would say is that you need to work towards drawing lines, not only with this person but with the entire team. So that does not mean that you create or you fight with this person, or you so creating a line, what I mean by that is that if your teams are in disagreement, or if your teams do not like uh, some particular point, they can always come to you and talk to you about it, but they cannot make a group and say that we are all in disagreement. So I think the groupism mentality needs to be broken. If anyone is provoking a particular conversation, it's more about how well you can go ahead and manage it and draw the line. So maybe offline meeting will be important to speak to this particular person and ensure that it leads to a common conclusion. The other way of doing it also is add more initiatives and responsibilities to this person. Now, the reason I say that is because there have been instances and times, and that does not mean that load this person so much that he or she feels that they should quit the organization. What I mean by that is that there is a possibility that empty mind is devil's workshop, and that is the reason this person is finding ways and means of how to push back on things. So you might want to occupy this person a little bit with some or the other task. So that would be my recommendation or suggestion to you. Uh, Aravindan, I do not disagree to it that many a times in practical scenarios, organizational meetings are not agenda driven, especially senior leaders start the meeting with a particular topic and they hit the tangent. I do not disagree to that. So I'll tell you something interesting. Is it really a team member's fault? No. So I think the one thing, as I said in the meeting, right? So the unfortunate part is that the leaders today very strongly believe that if they have set up a particular time, they need to speak for that entire time. we need to understand. I think it's time we start evolving, and when you all become leaders, it's necessary that you all follow these as practices. That when we have a situation where a team where you have hired a team who are a matured set. Now you're the one who's hiring teams, right? The managers are the ones who are hiring people in their teams, right? So when they did the hiring, in most probability 99% of the cases, they would have hired people who are matured and who are the right fit for the particular job. Now, the unfortunate part is that as soon as they come inside the organization and start working for this manager's team, the manager starts feeling that, okay, fine, now this person is working in my team. I need to give as much knowledge to this person as possible. Now, the unfortunate part again is that it's absolutely fine to get all the knowledge possible, but when the manager starts thinking that the knowledge that I'm sharing has to be repeated time and again, then there is a problem. So I understand that many meetings are not agenda driven, and I have been a part of many meetings that are not agenda driven, and I do not deny that. But the problem out there is with the manager and not with the participants. So I have been a part of a 3-hour meeting which had zero outcome, and the manager uh, at that point of time spoke for 3 hours. So it was not really. I would strongly believe that he was not really a he was not really a leader. He was a manager. He just wanted to show off. Uh, that this is a meeting that I have started and I would want to take it to a closure. So, not really your fault. There's nothing you might want to, there's nothing wrong sharing a feedback with your manager if you're or your leader in case if they're open to take that feedback. Many a times it's an ego driven thing, but if you think that you can speak to your leader, do not hesitate sharing that feedback. Uh, I do not disagree to this, Nitesh. In this era of MS Teams, lots of meetings are being set up, and it becomes very difficult to keep MOM for all the meetings. How to handle this? Uh, I agree. So, and that is the reason I would not really, in most of my meetings, I wouldn't usually keep a minutes of meeting. I would keep an action item tracker. The reason I say that, and I would say the difference between these two mainly is that minutes of meeting is where you you might not necessarily put it on an Excel sheet. You're putting it on a Word document and you're sharing it across with the entire team. Now, the reason I usually I have been following an action item tracker is mainly because it becomes easier to put on the pointers, create filters, and just in the next meeting, just open the points or just filter it with the points that say open points, right? Instead of going through the entire set, okay, what was discussed in the last meeting, and I read out all of it, doesn't really make sense. The things that are closed needs to be out of that Excel. So it you can just put it as closed and put it under the filter which says closed, open for your information, and so on and so forth. So the next meeting that I would go to, I would mainly open the points which are ongoing and which are open. And I would only discuss on that, and maybe two, three more pointers that can get added. So I think it would be slightly more easier to maintain an Excel sheet with with the required amount of drop downs. Now, believe me, the Excel sheet that I showed you all is in the most draft form. I mean, that can be you can use as much technology as you need on enhancing that Excel sheet and working towards creating a better Excel sheet in terms of putting all the required drop downs, putting all the required filters, putting all the sorting things that you require and not require. So that would be my recommendation to you, Nitish, on this one. Uh, Rami, I understand. And that is what I answered for Sasikala as well. During a meeting, how do we handle with difficult person who always argue? See, every person who's arguing, right, there has to be a reason for why they are arguing. So it's necessary to understand the reason. I know that you might not really like my answer and you might think that, oh my God, I am the one who's facing it and he's just saying that, you know, this is what it is. But the fact of the matter is that you know if you deep dive and understand as to what is it that there are multiple things to it, right? So there is a possibility that this person doesn't like you as a leader. There is a possibility that this person thinks that they know more than what you know. Now that happens many a times, right? I'm sure that in many of the organizations, and all of us must have felt it, that, oh, my boss knows nothing, I know more than what my boss knows. And the problem starts over there, because what happens is that I have had instances of my team members feeling that they know more than what I know. And maybe they were domain experts. So I used to, and let me tell you a joke out here. I managed a team which was an accounts payable team, and my boss told me that he wanted me to manage this team. And even before I was moved to this team, I told my boss that the only thing I know about accounts payable is the spelling of accounts payable. So my boss was confident about me. He said that, don't worry, I think you'll do a good job. And he moved me to this team. Now, when I moved to this team, it was difficult because I had chartered accountants working in this team. And I used to manage, and I had to manage this team. And believe me, a lot of difficult people they knew it for a fact that they know finance 100 times better than what I would know. The only way I could solve this is by two things. One is creating a relationship with them, creating a strong bond with my team. I used to go out for regular breaks. So anybody would walk up for a break, I would go with them. I'll ask them 10,000 questions. So the two things that I worked on was to developing a strong bond with the team. And the second thing was to enhance my knowledge. So I used to ask questions like as if there is no tomorrow. So they were chartered accountants, they knew things like the back of their hand. So I would ask them everything, right from tax to uh, to laws, to labor laws, to you name it, and I would ask them. So I think it's more important to understand why is it that this person is being difficult. So I would recommend you to have an offline discussion with this person to understand what really the issue is of why is it that they are raising this, or why is it that they are deliberately arguing. They are not arguing just because they enjoy arguing. They are arguing either because they want to waste the time of the meeting and they don't want the important topics to be discussed, or they want to push back on you. So you might want to draw the line somewhere and have difficult conversations with them, or maybe conversations with them to understand uh, how we can lead to a good outcome. Uh, All right. Thanks, Pilar. Thanks, Shashikala, saying that it was a wonderful insight. Thank you so much. Uh, Shashikala, I think you've asked one more question. Can we get the slides to go through the points once again? Uh, I think we can arrange for that. Namita, in case if you're on the call, you can possibly share the slides if Shashikala wants it.
Yeah,
It's
sure, I'll do that. I'll do
yeah,
that. Share the slide.
sure, sure. All right. Any other questions or thoughts that you all might have? Feel free to share. Is this session recorded? That's a question that Rami is asking. So yes, this session is recorded. And to answer your next question, Rami, that will you be able to get the recorded version of this session? So I think Namita can answer that.
We'll be putting up this recording up on YouTube. So if anybody wants to refer to anything again, they can always visit our channel.
Sure. And I think also importantly, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll be more than happy to support any one of you all for anything, any suggestion or recommendations that you all would need. I'll be more than happy supporting you all on that. Cool. So we still have 2 minutes. If there is any last question, I'll be more than happy answering it. How to gel with a new team of 25 plus members? I think the biggest advantage that you have is that it's a new team. So I would say, Sasikala, the way I would do it is see, many a times when we have a new team, it's necessary to know what is it that they like, they dislike. It's necessary to understand for all the leaders that when we are having 25 members in the team, we are speaking about 25 different mindsets, we are speaking about 25 different thoughts, we are speaking about 25 people having difference of opinions with each other, possibly 25 religions, 25. You're speaking about 25 completely different people. If you have to get all of them on the same boat, and if you have to get all of them together, the one thing that you can do is to show up to them that you are the leader. Now, that is not by dominating them. That is not by, taking a scale and saying that, okay, 25, I'm the teacher, you're the team members, so you need to start following me. It's more about creating respect for that, so creating, respecting the team, and the team needs to respect you back. So the only way that can happen is when you work towards build, you should know every single thing about them. You should know who their boyfriend is, who their girlfriend is, what are their hobbies, what is their likes, dislikes, every single thing about your team. And that is what will create the difference. Try this. If you're able to connect with these 25 members and know everything about them like the back of your hand, believe me on this, these 25 people will they will love you as an individual, and they will support you wherever need be. So that is, I think, a very important way of doing it. So that would be my recommendation. And the biggest advantage, as I said, is in your question, 25 new team members. Cool. Any other questions, or we can conclude? All right. It was an absolute pleasure talking to all of you all. Thank you so much for joining in. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Namita, for coordinating this. Really appreciate it.